All right, welcome to Building the Athlete. I'm your host, Scott Benson, and on today's show, our guest is Justin Kegley. I call him Coach Keg, and he's got some exciting things going on in his life and his business. And Coach Keg, welcome to the show, and tell us what's up with you.
Well, Scott, appreciate you having me on. So this is a great honor for me to be able to be with you. And so we got a lot of really great stuff happening. So I'm a performance coach in Rockford, Illinois. I've owned a business called Movement Fitness for the last 10 years. And so we've had an opportunity to train a lot of athletes. And in particular, we specialize in training, female athletes. And that was kind of a thing that I fell into out of circumstance rather than choice at the beginning, but it's something that we've done well over the last 10 years. And so that's what we're passionate about, is helping make sure people that they do their best, they live their life to fulfill their full potential. So that's what we work on, and I'm excited to talk.
Ready to be part of something big? Meet the Rapid City Sports Commission, the powerhouse behind sports in Rapid City. The commission focuses on bringing regional and national tournaments, supporting homegrown events, and creating opportunities for our kids. But it's not just games, it's a win-win for all of us. Youth sports fuel our economy. Hosting events in Rapid City means out-of-town families shop, dine, and stay with us, which boosts sales tax revenues too. To get in on the action, visit rcsportscommission.com, where we're all about the hustle.
Okay. Well, tell me about the book or books that are coming out.
Oh, for sure. Tuesday, February 3rd, launching two books. One is a parent edition and the other is an athlete edition. So becoming the unshakable female athlete or raising the unshakable female athlete is are the books that are coming out. And that kind of came out of a project that I've been working on again for the last 10 years. So when we opened up our business, my goal was to train football and baseball guys, because that's who I was and what I knew. And so what I quickly realized is that when you open in August, football players aren't coming to facilities like mine because they're with their football team. And so we had to make some adjustments. And I got a call from a friend of mine, that physical therapist, and said he had an athlete that needed some work after therapy. And I got really excited. And then he said, she is a 5'5" soccer player that is a goalie. And she's 4 months off of her ACL. And I had never trained a female athlete to that point. I'd never worked with a soccer player, and I had never worked with anyone coming off of an ACL tear, but it became a project for us. And fortunately, I had a good resource with him, and obviously training that I've had in the past. And so that's where it began. And, you get result for one, and then another came in, and then another. And so we started building this niche, and that was how our business started to evolve. And so fortunately, it worked for us. And over the last 10 years, we've trained, over 1,000 female athletes, and working with them and understanding, like, how do we help them? You go, look, they're going to need the same things in a lot of ways and aspects that boys need. But what we do know is there's some unique things that female athletes need. Number one, training for female athletes, preparation for performance is not to the standard yet that male athletes are, right? There's a study, I think in 23, that showed that 50% of boys are required to strength train for their varsity sports, while it's 9% for female athletes. And this is like crazy. And when you look at female athletes are between the ages of 14 and 18, they're 4 to 6 times more likely to tear their ACL than boys. And so these are all things that I had to learn and develop over time and understand about what female athletes need in terms of, single leg training, reducing injury risk, helping them to continue to grow from, just getting stronger overall. And so we've learned a lot over the last 10 years, and taking those pieces, going like, what's the training, what's the mindset, nutrition, recovery perspective that they need in order to help them to truly become who they were created to be, and give them an opportunity to play, what they're doing now, the sports that they love, but also to help them to build longevity over life, because what they're doing now obviously impacts them as they get older, especially in terms of like avoiding osteoporosis and building strength and bone. So those things are really important. So ultimately, I took what we've done for the last 10 years, put it into a book, and put that out for female athletes. So that's going to be something that I'm really proud of. And then also on the parent side, I'm a parent, and knowing that parents need instruction too. And when you look at what happens in a lot of our competitive club sports right now, a lot of it's really good and a lot of it's not. And so helping to continue to educate parents, go like, look, these are the things that I know that my athletes come in and tell me. And these are the things that I see as a parent and a coach of club sports teams. and knowing like, how do we help them? I know you're well intentioned, but maybe some of your tactics and things that you're doing aren't going to help them to get them to where they want to go or where you want them to go. So I thought let's make those two separate things because they are a little bit. And obviously, I'd provide an overview in the parent book of what they should be looking for if they're looking for training for their kids. But that's the context of where I'm at. Those things are launching, like I said, Tuesday, the 3rd of February. And so we'll begin that journey then.
Congratulations. That's awesome. I
Well,
can't
thanks.
wait to pick up my copies. Do I need to get both of them since I'm a parent and work with athletes?
Yeah, that would be great. I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
that's the challenge is creating a parent book. Really, that was my initial thing, right? Was I had written the book, Raising the Unshakable Female Athlete, and a lot of context and content because I wanted to continue to raise awareness of issues that are impacting female athletes. And so understanding like, injury risks are different, the lack of training and preparation, breaking down some old myths of, strength training is going to make them bulky or slow or whatever the case may be, helping provide context to parents and coaches as well. But doing that, I was challenged then by a friend of mine while I was basically completed that book. And he said, this is great, but you also need to write it to athletes because a lot of parents will want to be like, here, let me buy the book and I'll give it to my kid to read. And I didn't want them to get a version that didn't speak to them. So I wanted to make sure that what they were getting was appropriate for them to hear a message from a coach that's worked with a lot of female athletes so that they're getting the information that they need.
Yeah. And you brought up the club sports world, which, you made a good point that you think the majority of the time it's well intentioned. One thing that I see and just, you and I have been doing this roughly the same amount of time. If you talk about the Midwest, you and I have trained thousands and thousands of athletes. And do you think with the club sports scene, do you think there's just way too much emphasis put on playing as opposed to skill development and athletic development?
100%. Well, you look at it, there's always in season. You look at sports like volleyball, basketball, and soccer, they almost all three of them carry an expectation that the kid's going to play year round, right? When they get into high school, that changes because they go from club to high school back to club. But, they're still doing, depending on where you're at, they're still participating in different events throughout the course of the year. And when you look at overall trying to help someone to develop into the best version of themselves, that doesn't just happen in games. We need to help them to continue to grow and develop. We have flipped from let's practice, 5 days a week and have 2 games or whatever the case may be back from, when I was younger to now it's like, let's compete all the time. And I see clubs that are constantly going like, hey, we're going to add in this game here. We got a friendly over here. Or we're going to put these things on your schedule. And they continue to say, hey, go to showcases, go to events, go to ID camps, and all that's great. But what I ultimately continue to come back to is going like, what are you showcasing at these camps? And what are you doing if you're not putting in the work in advance, if you're not developing your skills, but also if you're not able to be explosive and powerful, if you're not doing the things that are going to help you in your sport to be better as an athlete, not just a player. That's another point. Be an athlete, not just a player of your sport. When you see that and you go like, these people are looking for more than just a small forward that plays basketball. They're looking for something, colleges, they're looking for more than that. They're looking for athletes like that can play. Because ultimately, in one system, you may play this position, but in their system, you may play another. But if you don't have the athleticism to be like, look, we could put you in multiple spots. And as an incoming freshman, we could get you on the field earlier if you were able to be adaptable, and then we'll put you into that spot later. You see that right now, and you go like, no, this kid plays this position, and that's all they do. Well, if I don't get recruited for that because I'm not showing the things that they need, then you're cutting yourself short. So I hate that we just go competition, 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 rather than let's continue to develop and also look at what are the things that they need to do athletically that'll help them get faster, more explosive, reduce injury risk, and be able to, if you're playing sports like soccer and basketball that are like high contact, right? Like you got to be able to be strong enough to be able to battle in the paint or battle for a ball. And so if you're not able to do that, again, it goes back to what are you showcasing to these people?
Right. And I always talk to athletes about you're going to these showcases to sell a product. And
Yep.
what is the product you're putting out there? Because with the transfer portal and with NIL money and how competitive it's become, they don't care. They don't care if you lit it up in AAU, no matter
Yep.
what the sport is. You could be an all-world volleyball player. You could have 500 kills a season, but if you're 5'8" and your approach touch is 9'4", they're not even going to look at you. So
Correct.
all you're doing is going there to let them know that they're going to check you off the list, because it's that much about metrics now at the higher levels. And it amazes me that in today's day and age that more people don't understand. And that's why I try to search out people like you, you're trying to inform parents and athletes of what's real and what's not real, because social media has blurred that so badly that kids don't know and the parents don't know. And the recruiting game is completely different. And I think, to summarize your point, the question has to be asked, why? Why are you doing this? And I don't think that question's asked enough, because people just keep, going where everybody else goes, doing what everybody else does, but
For
they
sure.
want to be that 5% of kids that is different. So
For sure.
it's
I think for
interesting.
me, like going off of that point, I would say there's two things that really bother me about this process of just competition. Number one is when a kid comes to us and they're hurt, right? And so they've either done therapy, they had an ACL tear, or they had some other kind of injury and it's kept them out. And that always breaks my heart when I look at them and go like, man, if I can't guarantee it, but I know the percentages tell me if you'd have come to us sooner, you'd have been healthier and able to stay on the court or field longer and better, probably. The other thing that really, really hurts is when you go to an ID camp or when you go to a showcase, and that kid comes in and says, hey, they said I have to hit these numbers. I have to get this speed. I have to get this vertical. I have to do this thing. And I've got like 4 months to do it. And you're like, that's tough. And you feel bad for the kid. You go like, all right, well, we're going to do everything we can. We're going to give you the effort. We're going to give you the work. You got to put in the effort, and we'll do everything that we can. But that's a really tight time frame. And you've probably cost yourself the scholarship to the place that you want to go or the opportunity that you wanted to have because you didn't do this sooner. And so that's why when you look at clubs, you go, man, I'm a fan. You have to do it. You have to play. There's stuff that I would obviously want to change, but they have to do it. But most clubs that I know are not doing the other things from a performance perspective that will help their athletes to truly excel. I know that there's a few that are, and they do a really great job. But when they don't, those kids miss out. And unfortunately for us, people don't have this conversation with athletes when they're, everybody at 12 or 13 wants to be a D1 player. They want to play professionally or whatever the case is. But, at some point you go like, what got you here won't get you there. Like we have to continue to build onto this thing to make sure that you're the athlete that people want to have in their program. And that requires more than just playing weekend tournaments.
Yeah. And typically those kids that are studs when they're 12 or 13, they kind of flame out. I call it the little league, the curse of the Little League World Series. You see these guys that are just, they're just advanced physically and they never really had to work too hard. And here comes everybody else that goes through puberty and gets bigger and faster and stronger. And that kid's forgotten because they never learned how to work hard.
I feel bad for those kids a lot because you have parents that come in, they're like, well, my kids, we're looking at D1. You're like, well, how old are they? They're 10? Like, hang on, just hold your horses. But, I think with those other kids, the lesson for them is to go like, man, don't give up, because if you continue to put in the work and effort, like puberty happens for everybody. And we don't know what that looks like, but at some point, your physical domination probably isn't going to last if that's happening at 12 or 13. So
Absolutely. Yeah. I was an absolute train wreck until, really my junior year in high school. And, I went from a 6'2" high jumper as a sophomore, which was, not great, to a 7'2" high jumper my senior year.
Yeah.
Things happened, things changed. And I wasn't one of those stud athletes. So I was working. And I'm so thankful that that's how it happened for me, because I do think these kids that have success early, they think they've got it made, and it's just, it doesn't work that way. I had a couple shows ago, I had a recruiter on, and he's a good old Southern boy and says it how it is. And he said, as far as going to ID camps and college camps, he said, if they don't know what your name is when you're getting out of the car, they're not going to know what it is when you're getting back in the car. It just does not work that way. Those are money grabs. Are there exceptions to the rule where some kid shows up that's just a freak athlete? Of course. But for the 99%, that's not really how it works.
Absolutely.
Tell me, you're writing this book, or wrote this book, to kind of depicting the last 10 years in the business, what are the biggest changes that you've seen in the sports performance world?
I think the biggest changes are, well, number one, we continue to battle with making sure we get kids in because of more competition. But also, I don't know, that's a good question. Changes, like, I look at what we do and I think everybody thinks that they need something special. And I think the biggest thing is when you look at social media, parents and kids and all the stuff, they come in and they think, well, if I want to do X, I need to do these exercises that so and so is putting on their Instagram or their social media or whatever the case is. And you go, ultimately, for 85+% of your journey, the fundamentals are the things that matter, right? Rather than worrying about trying to skip steps and achieve something that you're not physically able to achieve. Why don't we focus on the things that are going to get results and the things that I know that have gotten results for our athletes over a decade? So I think really it comes in mentality and what happens, because I know for us, like, we continue to evolve, we continue to try to develop our training. We focus a lot obviously on speed work because I think that makes a huge difference. We've implemented more and more of that certainly over the last 5 years. We've continued to do that and time that and make sure that we're getting the best effort out of kids. But ultimately is continuing to share the message of what we talked about earlier, is ultimately going like, what competition is not going to get you to where you want to go, because there's more clubs, there's more teams. And just because you're on a club doesn't mean you're actually on a good one or someone that's going to actually develop you. So for us, I really go back to, like, I want to make sure that everybody's progressing along the continuum of how do we make great athletes. And that is making sure that we can, before you're hopping, you're doing, bilateral jumps. And before you do that, we're making sure we can stick landings and doing some of the fundamental stuff that people go like, nah, I don't want to do that. I want to do what I saw on social media. And you're like, awesome. You have to earn that. And so I think there's a lot of mindset that has shifted. And also just making sure that everybody knows that not everybody, I don't know, everybody thinks their kid is special, and I think that's great. Their kid is special to them, but making sure, like, look, they need to build the process just like everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because something got a lot of likes on social media doesn't mean that it's effective.
So basically, pay less attention to social media. That would be the key,
Yep.
which is
Yeah.
it's hard because there's a lot of good stuff that gets shared and done on that, but it takes a lot of people down as well.
Right. And, your purpose for writing a book, my purpose for doing a podcast is to try to put truth out there. And, you just made a comment, you got to be able to do bilateral hops before you can do single leg bounding. And you got to be able to do this before that. That is going to be absolute Greek to somebody, to most people. They're not even going to know what you're talking about because, I feel like on the female side, there's maybe a little bit more reception there, but on the male side, it's just, I got to squat, I got to bench, I got to deadlift. And, you made a good point about getting more involved in speed training. My background as a track athlete, I
Mhm.
started there. So
Yep.
I've always been kind of in that speed world, developing, force production, a lot of plyos, a lot of speed drills. And, one thing I've learned over the years is that training at that top end is huge, huge injury prevention work.
Absolutely.
And I had Tony Holler on the show who feed the cats, and he's
Yep.
very big on that philosophy. And speak to that a little bit of what your experience is.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of what Tony does, and he's helped shape a lot of the stuff that we do in terms of, speed development, because obviously we don't have track people per se in our facility. I may have some track athletes, but I'm not coaching track people. But we want to take those principles and philosophy and apply them to our athletes, because you look at it, number one, if somebody's not in a facility like ours, the likelihood that they're actually doing speed training is zero to none. I mean, it's like almost non-existent. They think conditioning is speed training, and it's not, right? They're making themselves more tired, which Tony talks about, like 6 seconds or less, right? Like, we got to do something fast. We got to fully recover, and we got to make sure that we're doing it to the best of our ability. So I think for us, we're teaching the mechanics of what we're doing from, skipping and marching and making sure we're doing all of those things appropriately. We use the dasher timing system, so that way we can time it. And it does a couple things. Number one, we're making sure that we get the best effort out of a kid every single time, so we can measure that and we can have conversations about that. Number two, it also tells us where our athletes are at, right? So it's really great, especially in season, to go like, man, if this kid's, so much off of their time, then we know, like, hey, they're probably really tired. Like, not just like, hey, I didn't sleep well or, had a game and I'm tired, but like, I'm neurologically tired. Like, I'm down that may change the tone of our session for them based off of where they're at. But I think that's really key. So speed training has been huge for us, and we track that over time. So we rank, record, and publish, just like Tony talks about. So we put that up on our board so that way kids can see it, and it's a great way to go. Like, this is a motivating factor and a fun way for our kids. I think in terms of, you know, the other side of it, plyometrics, look, I think it is super important for everyone, but in particular, I think it borders on magical for female athletes. I really do. Like, when you look at being able to take someone from doing a single leg hop, making sure they can stick a landing first, that they're doing a box hop, and then we're progressing to different variations from, stick and mini bounce and continuous on hurdles. When you look at that, you go like, look, I can tell what you're doing dynamically on the court in a snapshot right here, because I can see that you can't stop yourself. You're not sitting back. Your knee goes in valgus. We can understand and see those things. So I think that's something for us. It's a great tool to use to go like, here's where you're at. I can literally show you what this looks like, and here's what we actually want to happen. And so then making sure that they work through that. So we're also, obviously, because of field and court sports, I love medicine balls. So being able to use that stuff as well to apply, whatever kind of implement they're using in their sport, I think is really great to make sure that they can rotate. So those are really big keys. And that's, we do our warm up, we do our activations, we do our dynamic warm up, and we spend that along with our power development is really 40 to 45 minutes of our session. You go like, that's a huge chunk of time to go like, this is how important I think it is that we need to be able to do these things. And again, for field and court sports, we're doing that straight ahead, and we're also doing it, laterally, medially, multi-direction and all of that.
Do you think with the plyometrics, talking about it being magic for females, do you think those adaptations are neurological or more physical?
That's a great question. Both. It really is. Part of that is, part of it is, you're grooving a pattern, and helping them understand what that is. And that doesn't just happen, through the muscle, right? We know that. But then also as they progress up, early on, it's probably more muscular than it is, anything else, because we're trying to get the pattern. But as you go through, like, it becomes less muscular and more, neurological, maybe, like when you terms of like continuous and being able to hop and progress through, your hurdles. So because it becomes second nature, like we should already have those patterns in. And when you look at people that are super dynamic, it's way easier, and it's less, it looks effortless, right? So it's less effortful, I guess, when they're able to do it and to do it well. But it takes a lot of time to build that up. It's not just something that you get overnight. And especially when you start with like middle schoolers and you progress them up, that's ideal in my mind, because they don't have bad patterns to break for the most part. We have opportunity to teach them almost from scratch. So that's a big part of it.
Yeah, definitely. So I was talking to a couple of my former athletes, and they were both high level, one softball, one track. They both went on to be multiple time NCAA All-Americans. And they told me that coming into my facility the first day was one of the hardest things they ever did. And they were both 7th or 8th graders at the time, but they said the intimidation factor was crazy. And you kind of mentioned this earlier about the percentages of males and females that are training. Do you think it's that intimidation factor that's keeping females out of the gym?
I think that's a part of it. I certainly do. Number one, obviously making sure we create awareness so that they know it's important, and not just like, oh, this is a nice to have. Like, this is an essential. Making sure that message gets shared is great, really important. But when you don't have someone talking about it, or somebody tells you, hey, you should go do this, to walk into a place like ours, it's big. Our facility is about, 5,500 square feet. You go, it's a big space. There's bars and squat racks and medicine balls. And you walk in, you go like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Right. So when you walk into that, it is an intimidating atmosphere. So I think it's really important, for us, we have a lot of kids that come in with someone. So obviously that's super helpful. And that's part of, again, spreading the message that makes it much easier. But yeah, walking through the doors the first time is a challenge for a lot of them, because they don't know what it is. I think when you look at guys, they're either they have done it, or they know like, hey, my brother did this, or whoever did this, and so I know this is what we do because it's a part of football, it's a part of baseball, or whatever. And that's just, we have to do that. And that's just not the case for as many female athletes. So trying to knock that down as much as possible and continue to share the message, you're like, this is really important, is part of the mission so that when they do walk in the doors, they go like, all right, I don't know what this is, but what I do know about female athletes is that they are willing to listen. They learn really well for the most part, the vast majority, and they're able to get really great results because of that. You know, if you tell a boy, you're like, hey, we're going to go deadlift today. They're going to put 3 plates on each side, even though they've never done it in their life. And you're like, okay, hang on, pal. Right. Whereas the other way, you know, females generally, we have to like, hey, we're going to continue to progress up. You're stronger than you think you are. Let's continue to move this. You do it well. But that also allows us a chance to do that. So yeah, intimidation is a big part of it.
Yeah. Now, with that said, when you do get him into the gym, and I'm going to preface this by apologizing to all the young men that I train, but once you get him in the gym, they are so much easier to work with. They want to come at 5:30 in the morning. They want to be efficient. They want to get it done. If they have a question, they ask it. It's you know, so much better to work with young females. The guys, you know, you gotta, like you said, you gotta take the weight off, do it right. They're complaining because they're sore. You know, they're complaining because they're up early. Yeah, the females, no complaints. They just get in there and get the job done. You have the same experience?
Yeah. The boys get their egos bruised. And look, I was a 15-year-old boy once too, so I know what that was like for me. But it's easy to bruise a boy's egos when you're like, hey, we got to go down. You're not doing this well. It's like, oh, right. And so that creates a lot of issues. Whereas on the other end, you know, the girls generally do. They want to come in. You know, a big part of us is a big part of our, you know, philosophy and goal. It's like, look, we want to have a relationship with these people to understand, help them like, look, we're a safe space for you. So what we're going to do in here is we're going to challenge you. We're going to understand what you're doing, you know, from a sport perspective, and then we're going to apply those things here. And they are way more willing to ask questions, to stop. What I also see females do is like they are way more likely to actually go like, hey, and when I tell them I want you to do this, they're gonna think, all right, 1, 2, 3, I'm gonna do that. Do I do this? Or they're gonna like do the movement like in their head or like a little bit out loud so that they can rehearse it and then ask the question if they still don't know, versus like, I'm just gonna wing it and see what happens. Right. And again, they're way more willing to ask questions, and it longitudinally leads to a lot of really great development.
Today's episode of Building the Athlete is brought to you by Branded Bills. If you're like me, you live in your hat, at work, on the field, in the weight room, and everywhere in between. Branded Bills makes premium, high-quality hats that actually fit right and hold up to the grind. Clean, everyday styles that are built for athletes and coaches who demand more. Check out Branded Bills and upgrade your headwear game today. There's a link in our bio for 10% off your first order. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, one thing I see where, you know, if you've got, let's just talk about a male athlete that is, you know, football player, 6'4", 230 pounds, super twitchy, you know, type 2 athlete, you know, I feel like you're kind of limited on their upside potential, to where I feel with females, because just naturally they have a lot less type 2 muscle fibers. Like,
Sure.
I think you can make such big gains with them through strength training and plyometrics that, you know, I think it's getting to a point in some of the like men's Division I sports where there's a genetic component that's really hard to overcome. But if you give me a female that's 6 foot, 6'1", and they can move fairly decently and they're highly skilled, I feel like I can get that female to become a high level athlete in the weight room with the plyometrics, with the speed training. How does your philosophy relate to that?
Absolutely. I agree with that. And that's why when you see the amount of, you know, injuries, 1 in 100 female athletes are going to tear their ACL in high school, 1 in 10 in college, you look at those numbers, and whether that's a re-tear or a new one, you know, that's what makes me really frustrated, because we know that we can simultaneously reduce the risk of injury by about 70% through strength and neuromuscular training, while also helping them to maximize their performance. So you can see them continually over time getting better. They can get more explosive. They can get more powerful. And that comes from like, I train, I don't do like, I'm, you know, from a younger level, obviously we spend a lot of time, you know, just building foundations. But when we get into like the high school level, depending on where the athletes are at, like we're working speed and plyometrics in the beginning, and we're working strength in the same session most of the time. That's the way our sessions are set up, because I get 2 to 3 days, 3 really max a week with our kids. I get an hour and 15 minutes each. You go like, I'm going to do the best thing possible that I can for these kids. And you can continue to see it. So we track our vertical jump, we track our long jump, we track our speed to continue to see that progression over time. Obviously, we're tracking our weights from a strength perspective. So to go like, look, this is where we're at, and this is how we're going to continue to progress for them. You can make a massive difference in those, in female athletes in particular. And that's what we continue to see over the years. And that's why we continue to put out the program, to know that if you want to be a better player, be a better athlete first. And so that, I think that I said it earlier, but that's what really drives me nuts now, is just having players versus athletes. And that's what we're trying to do for our kids, is make sure that they can jump, they can hop, they can be explosive, but also be able to take a beating. Because if you watch any of the, especially recently with the continual rise in collegiate women's sports and professional women's sports, like those are some physical games, right? Like they are getting after each other. So you have to be able to do that and play at that level.
Yeah. So we've got them in the gym now. Now the challenge is, all right, ladies, it is okay to pick up and push heavy things. And so I try to have that discussion early on, freshman year. Like, look, we've got time with you. We've got 4 years, 5 years, whatever it may be. So we're not trying to move all the weight in the gym today, but by the time you're a senior, I try to set expectations. And what I do is I use past performance. So, I'll tell them, like, look, if you want to be a college athlete, I want to see you, trap bar deadlifting 300 pounds. I want you to be able to squat between 225 and 250. I want 150-pound clean. If you can hit these markers, then you're going to be in that arena that you need to be physical enough. And then, we're also going to track 10-yard acceleration, 10-yard fly, those type of things. But setting that expectation that it is okay to lift heavy. So there's kind of two things I'd like you to talk about. One is, how do you set those expectations? And then how do you deal with, well, I don't want to get bulky. Because that always seems to be a concern. And, I've got hundreds of high school boys trying to put on 1 pound that are in the weight room all the time, and they can't do it because they don't do the right things in the kitchen. And
Right.
It's, so it's, I'm joking, of course, but these females need to understand that that's not going to happen. How do you address those two things?
Well, I think this goes back to, I said earlier that social media is good, but also bad. This is the good part for me. A lot of my athletes start following me before they start coming in to train. And so what I get to do is I use my social media there, and I also use the kids that are in the gym that have been with us for a while. And they'll come in and they'll say, my gosh, Cortland, she's a D1 soccer player. I've trained her since she was in 6th grade. You go like, that girl's a stud. She scored 78 goals her senior year. I want to be like that. And you go, okay, well, she can deadlift 300 pounds. She can do 200 pounds external load on a rear foot elevated split squat, right? Like, have all these markers. You go like, okay, if that's what you want to do and you want to be like her, then you better be like her in here, right? So I've got girls that they'll come in and be like, oh, I saw so-and-so on, Taylor's a gymnast at Oregon State. She's so strong and she's got this. Oh my gosh, I want to be like her. I'm like, well, that girl's in here like 3 to 4 days a week in the off season when she's home for the summer. Like, I trained her since she was a sophomore. These are the things that she does. So I try to do it from a relational perspective, because, we can tell them all the measurables. For some of them, you go like, that seems so far away, when you're like, oh, I can deadlift 100 pounds, but to get to 300, like, I'll never be able to do that, right? So I want to mitigate that as much as possible without lowering the expectation that they still need to get really strong, right? So then I get to use examples from other kids and go like, this person, you see this person, this is what they're doing, and this is what it's going to require of you. So continually trying to go build a relationship. They see the expertise from what they know on either social media or the kids that are in the gym with them at that moment. You go like, that girl's going to this place and this is what she's doing. That's what you need to do. So perfect example. I had a girl in 7th grade. She came to me and I asked her, I was like, what do you want to achieve? She's like, I want to go play volleyball D1. I'm like, awesome. What you're doing right now is good, but it's not going to get you there. And like, I remember like her jaw hit the floor. She was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm working hard. I'm like, you are working hard. but you're not working that hard. And so we had to set an expectation and change her mindset and go, let me point out to these girls, I've got this girl, Ella, who's playing at Marquette right now. This is what you need to do because that's what she's doing. And it's going to require these specific measurements. So I try to use it from a relational perspective and use the experience of the girls that I have had, and I can show them specifically what that looks like so that they look at them and it can mitigate the, well, I don't want to get bulky. And you go, well, she's definitely not bulky, right? Like she's been here since she was in sixth grade. She's definitely doesn't look like the Hulk. Okay. Like it's okay. She's really strong. And you can be the same thing if you put in the time and effort that these girls have put in ahead of you.
Yeah, and I like the jaw-dropping moment because
Yeah.
that is a perfect opportunity. Like, hey, by your senior year, I want you doing this, this, and this. The jaw hits hits the ground, and that's a perfect opportunity to walk in and build that relationship. And that's when you buy into them by saying, "Look, I know that seems like it's light years away, but you are so much more strong and so much more capable than you even know yet. Like right now, the thing that's limiting you is what you believe that you can do." And start that relationship by building trust, by showing that you're committed to them and that you really believe in them. So it's so fun when you do get females and they do start to move weight, and you can tell that the confidence changes, and they, it carries over onto the court or the field. And, like myself, I'm assuming that's kind of why you do what we do.
Yeah. Well, for sure. I want to see that translate. And I think that's the big part of being relational. And I find that to be obviously way easier with females than it is with males to be able to have conversations. And then when you get to speak into them and go like, hey, you can do this. Like, I believe in you. I'm not going to put you in a scenario where you're going to get hurt, right? Like, because that
Right.
doesn't help me and that certainly doesn't help you. So trust me when I say that you can do this. And secondarily, one thing that I find is really important is actually we celebrate failure in the gym because you go, look, if there's one place for you to fail, now clearly if we want to do that well, we don't want to put them in a bad spot, but to an extent, you go like, if there's one place that you should fail, it should be here. Because if you're not pushing yourself to the point where you're getting to a technical failure, right? Like we're working really hard and you go, maybe you got 3 instead of 5, and that was the thing that we called for, but we pushed you up in weight. We celebrate failure when things don't go right because number one, I want them to learn that perfection they'll never reach it. So we can continue to push for excellence, but stop worrying about being perfect because you're not going to be. And
Right.
that's going to translate to the field or court as well. And so we celebrate that and go like, I don't care. Like if you do this, I believe you can. I believe you can get 5, but if you only got 3 today, like we're still going in the right direction. I'm getting you to do more of what I know is right for you and to challenge yourself to get outside your comfort zone, to continue to get better. Like that's a win. But a lot of that comes again from the relationship of going like, look, I use a lot of our warm up time to go like, yes, we're doing all the stuff that we need to do to warm up, but that's also, hey, what happened in your game last night? What's going on in your life? What's going on in school? What's happening here? So we can have those conversations while we're doing that. And then you go like, well, these people care. And I will tell you, just as a performance coach, like one of the things that helped build our business early on was an accident. Was I started going to the games because I wanted to see how our kids were doing. Obviously, show them that I'm interested because I was, and learn how I can help them better on the field or court through the gym. And I had an athlete that was like, "Hey, take a selfie with me," and shared it on social media. And I was like, "Oh, that's great." And then she shared it, and her mom shared it, and people are like, "Oh, yeah." And so that's another positive there to go like, "Look, I really care. I'm going to come out to your games. I'm going to see where you're at as much as I can to see you play." And that also translates here. But again, it just goes back to a relational perspective that we have with them that you go like, "Oh, they really do care." And when they do care, I feel safe. And when I feel safe, I know that I'm going to be able to do more and do better because he's not going to hurt me to the best of his ability.
Yeah. So when you're hiring coaches, do you get the guy that comes in or the lady that comes in that's read every book, has every degree, has every certification, but can't carry on a conversation, or you get the person who's way less experienced technically, but has a lot of energy, can build relationships? How do you factor that in when you're hiring coaches?
Yeah. I mean, people first. Our core value is, people matter most, right? So that's number one for us. Because look, we can coach if you're willing to learn and grow. You can learn pretty much anything, right? And so clearly, somebody that's coming in, they're going to have some sort of background, right? But I don't need the smartest person in the room. I have a great example. I had a guy that came in, best resume I've ever had for a sports performance coach, like really, really like high end, high caliber. But 30 minutes into the observation assessment after 2 interviews, he's like checking his phone in the middle of the session. And I'm like, I know you can teach it. I know you can, but you're having a problem like communicating and showing your involvement with our people that are right here. And so I go, look, people matter most, number one. We'll train up everything else, right? So that would be the start of it. So because if they don't believe in you, like they don't care. Like when I walk into, we just started a speed training for a softball program, like day one, they don't know who I am. They don't care what my certifications or credentials or anything else are. They're going like, this dude, this is a big guy that's sitting here in front of me, and I'm not sure that I'm quite comfortable yet. You go, all right. After about 3 or 4 sessions, 2 to 3 sessions, whatever, as a group, you go like, all right, like he's all right. Like we're in a safe spot. Like everything's good. And then we can start pushing in. Nobody cares. What's the old mantra? Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And if you don't show people that you care, nothing else matters. They don't care how smart you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm huge on that. I spend a lot of time with my employees on
Mm-hmm.
you better be calling people by their first name. You better be asking them questions about anything other than their sports, what's going on in your life, just like you said. And I think it's made all the difference in the world for our business. So we've kind of talked about, setting expectations for that high-end athlete, but that's probably not the majority of what I work with and what you work with. So, tell me about this girl, because I know you've seen her, the one that walks in. She's, you can tell right away the core's weak. She's quad dominant. She doesn't have hamstrings, jumper's knee all the time, things like that. That's something that I see a lot of. And, it's, we know that it's building strength. It's building stability. And I think we use a lot of the same methods to do that. But
Mhm.
I know you've seen this girl. How do you handle this girl?
Were you here yesterday? No, I'm just kidding. So, we set up our system. We go like, look, everything I believe as a good coach, you go like, everything is a system and you have your progressions and your regressions, right? So we're going to start off with taking people through all the fundamentals of making sure that they can nail these movements to the best of their ability, whether they have issues or whatever the case may be. I'm going to continue to go like, look, when we're talking about our beginning portion where we're doing sprinting and we're doing plyometrics on that end, like our plyometrics, right? Jump training. We're back to that to go like, look, can you jump and land on this box and make it not sound like your feet are going through the floor and make sure you can sit back and absorb the force that's, this force possible, right? So can you do that? So our whole philosophy is go like, look, can we step back and go, all right, I could do this on the highest level, but I could also do it on the lowest level and be able to make sure that we can meet that person where they are. Because ultimately, if you push them too hard, they're going to get hurt or they're not going to see results. That happens a lot with kids that don't listen, and it's super frustrating. And you're like, no, we need you to slow down. We need you to stop, go back and do the right thing. So with somebody like that, we're going to spend, number one, movement quality. Can we help them in the warm up to make sure that they're doing the right things, that they can even get into these postures and positions, right? We use the warm up as basically an assessment that gives us an idea of how they're moving, not for the day, not only for the day, but for life. But then taking them through all of the regressions. You have to earn your next thing is really my philosophy. So whatever we're doing, I'm going to make sure that you do the baseline level first, and then we're going to progress you up. So we're going to squat, we're going to goblet squat, right? Can you get into that position? No. Okay, we're going to elevate your heels. Okay, once you can do that and we can walk you down the ramp, then we're going to do this. So, I've got people that are doing body saws on sliders, right? You're going to do a plank, right? Making sure that they can even get into the posture and position first, own that, then progress. So I think number one, from a female perspective, that's not super intimidating. From training boys, we still work with a lot of males. That's the challenge of not bruising the ego and doing that in a way that they will accept and not just shut down. So I think that's really making sure that we work with our coaches, that we have a full philosophy and system. Here's our progression, here's our regression, here's what we're going to do in between to make sure everybody gets what they need.
So then how do you handle, and I see this a lot where, you have the young lady comes in with dad or mom and she's growing 6 inches in the last year. I call it the baby giraffe phase. Completely uncoordinated, completely, core strength, hip strength, everything is not good, and they want to sign up for just speed training. And how do you deal with a parent to explain to them that, look, this is not a technical speed issue. This is a foundational strength issue, because a lot of times parents, they're well intentioned, they know what they need to get better at, but it's not clear to them that it's not a speed issue. They can't even hit the right positions,
Yep.
to hit the right angles and acceleration and because of strength. So how do you talk to a parent about that?
For sure. Well, number one, I would tell you, like, we set up our business that way we don't have to do that. You go like, look, we're doing sports performance in a group, in small groups, but we do that and we're doing all of these things built in because we believe they're that important, right? Because you can't do one without the other, right? You can't get into the right postures and positions if you can't get you can't get into the right postures for sprinting if you can't get in these other positions. So we built our business that way to not have like, hey, we don't do speed camps and we don't do anything else. Like, we do sports performance training. Yes, we have some that will do one-on-one if we need to do something different and special for them. That's different. But I also will tell you, like, I had an athlete in this weekend that I did an evaluation on. Gymnast, has grown a lot. And so I literally brought mom over through this evaluation. So I took her through, multiple different steps, different screens, and making sure that everything was, where she needed to be, figuring that out. And I just brought mom over. I'm like, well, look, this is a big part of her issue right here, right? Lacking glute strength. Like, she could get into a lot of positions and feel pretty good. She's a gymnast, so she's pretty dynamic, pretty good core strength overall. Obviously could use some development still, but looking at this, you go like, she's zero glute strength. If you look at this, she can't hold a side plank and raise her leg, do an adduction. Like, you're just going like, this is a big problem for her. It also causes knee valgus. All right. So showing parents these things to go like, you want her to do this. You want her, and her mom was great, to be fair. So not to point that mom specifically out, but you want them to do all these other things, yet they can't do this, right? So I will bring a parent in to show them that, and then there's also managing, the parents not to be like, get mad at the kid because they can't do this. You're like, they're just not strong enough. That's a whole other thing. But literally showing them. So you're like, if somebody's so specific, like, hey, these are the things we'll do, I'll take them through an evaluation and then show them the things that they're lacking so that they understand there's more components to this than just sprinting for more speed. You're like, that's great, but she can't stand on one leg, right? Like, she can't do the things that we want her to do long term because she's not strong enough. So she doesn't even have a baseline. So that's really where we start out. Most of our people, I think, are pretty good overall coming in. Parents have a better understanding than 10 years ago of like, hey, this is really a thing that we need to do overall. So they'll come in and know that, and they'll do their research online beforehand. But there's still some that think like, hey, I saw, she's got this girl on her team, or she's got this thing that she's competing against. And you're like, okay, great. That's awesome. But we have a lot of boxes to check before we get to worry about how fast she's sprinting.
Right. So probably one of the things I'm most proud of with my business over the last 16 years is we've had an astonishingly low amount of ACL tears. And, when we're talking over 5,000 athletes, I think it's less than 15 that we've had. And, obviously you can't ever eliminate injury, but in my opinion, I think with females, I think that combination of getting them away from being a quad dominant athlete and plyometrics, I think the mechanics and the neurological piece of where your body is in space has been the biggest key to that low injury rate for us. What do you see with how you train?
I agree 100%. We're in the same boat. So I'm well over 1,000 female athletes. We're probably closer to 2,000 plus with the boys that we've trained as well. So I know we have had one complete tear, and we had a couple during COVID that when they shut down, I don't know about you, but in Illinois, we shut down everything for a while. And then all of a sudden they opened it back up, and our clubs just were like, hey, let's just go play games. Yeah. So we had a couple of issues there. So yeah, I think that's really big. That's why I said earlier, I can be hyperbolic sometimes, but to be like, I think plyometrics truly are magical for female athletes. And the fact that it's not done more, and it's even something that if you look at, obviously it needs to be coached well, you could do this on a team very easily, very quickly as a part of a warm up to go through the process. But I really do think that is a big part of what we do. Obviously, they need to be strong enough. They need to be able to stop. So, like when you talk about like quad dominant, like one of the things that we work on a lot is we microdose deceleration in our warm ups every single time. So, unless we are doing all out max velocity, we are doing a breakdown, right? We are constantly getting them to do a breakdown. So that way they're learning to get back in those positions. We're trying to groove that pattern continually. We're working on snap down, single leg, double leg, different positions to get them in so that they know that they can't just like bend over, right? Or that they can't just fall forward with their knee forward. So we put those things into our warm up, the dynamic portion as we continue to build up, whether it's some linear speed we work on. We'll do 10-yard dashes with a 5-yard deceleration, right? So they're going hard for 10. We'll put up like some foam rollers. Obviously, I don't want them to run over and hurt themselves or whatever, but they're running. And then we put up some foam rollers as a barrier. You go like, you got to stop. You got 5 yards to go from max effort to full stop. And so we put that in, whether it's multi-directional days, right? So we're doing hip turn to sprints or whatever the case is, like we will throw in those things to make sure that we're decelerating appropriately, because I think that's very important. And then obviously getting them into the right positions in terms of changing direction. If we can check the boxes that go, they can land from a jump, they can decelerate, they can stop, change direction and stop, those two separate things. If they can do that and we can continue to build strength, man, things change. We see injury rates continue to go down because we know that 70% of ACL injuries happen with non-contact. So nobody's around, nobody touched them, right? Like that's the problem, is you can't, again, make that number zero. It's not prevention, right? You can't do that, but we can significantly reduce that risk by making sure that they can do all of those things. So that's why we constantly put them in everything rather than breaking up and go like, this is a strength session or this is a speed session. And look, if I had my kids every single day, obviously that would look with a little different from a programming perspective if they were a team sport or whatever. But that's the way we put it in because we think it's that important. So making sure that they can do those things all the time.
Yeah. And that ability to decelerate, I agree with you, is such a huge thing when it comes to the reduction of injuries. How does, we've talked about, landing jumps and learning how to decelerate, but how does that influence your programming on the strength side? Do you do a lot of eccentric work?
Yeah. So we do. So making sure obviously that it matches with, we're not doing something that's going to leave them super sore for a game or something that's coming up. So I'm obviously keenly aware of that, but I'm a huge fan of eccentrics, huge fan of isometrics in the right scenarios. So that way we make sure that our athletes can handle those loads and can do those things better, because, there's one thing to be able to like, hey, I can pick up and put down this weight with no pause or control or whatever, and actually being able to do something, to do a drop squat or to do something that they can stop, or to do even like depth drop, depth sticks, like coming off the boxes, being able to stick and get into those positions, absorbing load and force. So I think that's really important for us. So it definitely influences our stuff. So when we're in like summer program, we have way more eccentric work because I know that most of our athletes, depending on what sport they play, but most of our athletes have time to recuperate. So that's the biggest barrier for eccentric or isometric training for us. But other than that, yes, huge fan, huge application to make sure that we can help them to reduce injury risk.
Okay, so shifting gears just a little bit, all the hype right now is on creatine for females. I believe there's some really, really good things with it. What's your feel on that?
Big fan. I think it is something that I would want every female athlete to take. So I think there's zero downside. There's concerns like, am I going to get bulky? No. Like, is there other issues like water weight and things like that? Like, that's going to be more intramuscular than extramuscular. So I think that's certainly something that's going to help our athletes. So female athletes have 70 to 80% less creatine stores than males. And so automatically they're at a deficit. So when we talk about from a power perspective, right, our ATP PC system, we want to make sure that we can load that as much as possible. So why wouldn't we help them to do that? in addition to that, helping them to have like, their high intensity efforts, which go to the ATP-PC, but then also helping them to continue to get stronger, which has long-term effect, short-term and long-term effects, from long-term, from like reducing risk of osteoporosis, making sure their bones are healthy, because these teenage years are hugely influential for female athletes to continue to get, for females, excuse me, in general, to get stronger and have stronger bones for life. So I think it's huge. There's also a ton of research in terms of brain and hormonal stuff, which has come out recently. So that's a big factor. So I am a fan. I think obviously making sure that you take a product that is NSF certified for sport, making sure you have a company that's reputable, not just like going to buy. I don't like buying supplements where you buy your toilet paper. So I think if you can find a reputable thing. I'm not a fan of using like some of the gummies that have come out recently, just because I know that there are multiple studies that have shown that some of those do not have the level of creatine in it. So literally like base level creatine monohydrate in a powder, throw it in a thing, whatever you're drinking, water, take 5 grams a day, every single day, because you need to take it continuously to make sure that it works. I am a big fan because I think it can help support gaps in what they are already lacking, which is less creatine than males in general, and it'll be a huge support.
I agree with you on that. So we've come to the time. This is how we finish all my shows. We do the speed round. Okay.
Oh boy.
So I want short answer. Okay. As quickly as you can get it out. You ready?
Ready.
All right, here we go. Squat or deadlift?
Deadlift.
Bilateral or
Deadlift.
unilateral?
Unilateral.
Creatine before or after workout?
Doesn't matter.
Biggest misconception about training female athletes?
That they're soft and that they don't want to train.
What lift should every female athlete master?
Single leg squat or a skater squat.
Favorite warm-up?
World's greatest stretch.
Best age for a female athlete to start training?
11.
Mobility or stability?
Stability.
Biggest mistake coaches make with female athletes?
Not creating relationships.
Best protein source for females that's not a supplement? And same question for carbs.
Oatmeal or rice.
Okay. Awesome. That's it. It's kind of like the end of Family Feud.
Whew, I like it.
All right. Well, Justin, I really appreciate you being on the show. I think that was a lot of great information. The one thing that I did learn is I think if either one of us walked into the other's facility, it's probably going to look a lot the same.
Yeah.
I really enjoy finding people that share the same philosophies and are out there just trying to get the correct information to parents and athletes and coaches. So I sure appreciate your time. Tell everybody again where. So Becoming the Unshakable Female Athlete, when it comes out February 3rd, where are they going to be able to find that to purchase?
For sure. So they can purchase that on Amazon, or they can purchase it on the website, unshacablefemaleathlete.com. So we have information there on both books and some of the training and work that we do. So I really appreciate you having me on, Scott. Like, this is great. And I agree with you. The more we can continue to share this message, that's why, I wrote the book. To continue to make sure that we get this out, because it's really important. And sometimes what we think about in our little bubbles, seems like redundant, or like, yeah, everybody knows that. And then you get out in the world and you're like, no, not enough people know this.
Absolutely. Yeah, we get tunnel vision sometimes.
For sure.
So if anybody's listening that is just interested in your services, where's the best place to reach you?
So they can, unshacablefemaleathlete.com has training information there as well. So they can reach that, or you can go to coachkeg.com, and I have information there about training with me as well.
Right. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the show, and I had a great time, so we might have to do this again in the future.
For sure. Love to. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
Ready to be part of something big? Meet the Rapid City Sports Commission, the powerhouse behind sports in Rapid City. The commission focuses on bringing regional and national tournaments, supporting homegrown events, and creating opportunities for our kids. But it's not just games, it's a win-win for all of us. Youth sports fuel our economy. Hosting events in Rapid City means out-of-town families shop, dine, and stay with us, which boosts sales tax revenues too. To get in on the action, visit rcsportscommission.com, where we're all about the hustle.
Hey, thanks for joining Building the Athlete today with our guest, Justin Kegley, releasing his book, Becoming the Unbreakable Female Athlete, on February 3rd. Pick it up on Amazon.com. Great content today. Love sharing philosophies with other performance coaches. He's doing some great things with athletes in Illinois. If you enjoyed the content today, please give us a like or a subscribe. And if you want more information on Benson Sports Training and our online performance program or in person, bensonsportstraining.com, or you can go to Benson Sports Training on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. Got to give a shout out to Branded Bills for sending me this newest X-Gen model. I've got a little bit of an addiction with Branded Bills hats. Love them. Best hat that I've ever worn. Highly recommend them. So if you'd like to check them out, there's a link in our bio with a discount code for first-time buyers. Again, thanks for being with us today, and come check us out next time.